I sort of accidentally started selling rims and tires on eBay, basically selling these tires. There was this tire company I did a deal with. And so I ended up selling this. I think the guy wired me like $7,000. Just follow the path, follow the journey, follow whatever problem it is, and just go deep. I think I was maybe fearful that I was too young. And if anything, that was the advantage. A lot of folks, they enter into SMS. They think, let me apply the same way that I'm communicating over email, which is somewhat robotic. And so when you can sort of take that mask off and just be real, that's how you're going to get the best responses. And so the future is, well, how can you turn conversations like code moving into this more AI messaging space to where conversations can scale? Well, AI can come in and really in one click say, oh, that's really nice. We just made all that obsolete. People are just going to experience it and then want it.
Could you talk about what made you decide to be an entrepreneur? Was it accidental or intentional?
Yeah, I mean, it was accidental. So, I mean, I can go way back. So, when I was 19, I sort of accidentally started selling rims and tires on eBay. And if you want, I can go into that whole story. But
Did they
ultimately,
belong to you?
they did. Yeah,
Okay.
they did. So I wanted wheels for my car. I was 18 and wanted wheels, and basically called up a wholesaler and sort of made him sell me some rims without having a license to buy. Bought those 2 years later. I'm dead broke in college in Tallahassee, Florida, and basically my friend says, "Hey, why don't you sell your wheels on eBay?" And I had no idea. This is 2002, so I look it up and come to find out they're selling the wheels that I got for $468 on eBay for $1,000. That was the beginning of the journey. Learned everything I could about marketing and creating websites, and really fell in love with software. So yeah.
Now, maybe skipping ahead, knowing what you know now, what would you have told yourself when you were 19?
Oh man.
Like one thing, one piece of
Yeah.
wisdom.
Just follow the path, follow the journey. Follow whatever problem it is, and just go deep. Just continue to do that, just to discover. There's no right answer. Yeah, just I think I was maybe fearful that I was too young, and if anything, that was the advantage. Was being young. And so I think it took me a while to realize that youth was the advantage I had. Yeah.
So what was your journey to where you are now from selling rims on eBay to successful business and things going well? Can you talk maybe about some of the failures that you had along the way and how you overcame those along that journey?
Yeah. So I sold that first company. I was 23, and actually I didn't even plan on selling it, but I read a book by Bill Rancic. He was the guy that won the Apprentice for the first time, and I remember I'm sitting in the Barnes and Noble, like, what am I going to do with this business? So I remember Bill saying he used to wash boats in Chicago during summer. And he didn't realize until later that that was an asset that he could have sold. And I was like, oh my God, that's me. So that was the idea. I'm like, I could sell this. Wow, I could actually sell this. And so ended up selling that. But that just started the path of learning everything I could about internet marketing and copywriting, and just trying so much. And for me in that time, I was just like, I just wanted to learn as much as possible and try as much as possible. So, some of I guess more the failures, I don't even know if it was a failure, but it was just like all the learnings along the way. It's so many different projects, from, product launches to creating software, to creating info products, and just every problem that I had ultimately came into some sort of product. So I wrote like a credit repair book, an ebook, because I wanted to learn how to do it. And so I learned how to write copy and do upsells. And this is like 2006, 2007. So, everything that I just wanted to learn, I just said, hey, I already have a problem. Maybe I could just turn my problem into a product. And so, if I look at today, like every product I've created has been some sort of problem that I've had as a business owner, as, an entrepreneur. And so, yeah, all the problems became the adventure, and that adventure turned into a business. But 2015, I wrote this 3-part blog series called The Death of Call Loop. So I had this company called Call Loop. Still actually alive today, but it's an SMS marketing calling platform. I actually hated the business, but it was making money. It wasn't growing, it wasn't dying. But I was just like stuck. I couldn't build products. The dev team was not like, we just couldn't build stuff. So ultimately, I wrote this letter to my customers and sent it out to about 35,000 people. And it just went into the story about how I built this business that I secretly despised. And it wasn't because it's not that I didn't like it. It's just, it was so broken that I couldn't fix it and couldn't like solve their problems. And at the end of that series, it went into follow my journey as I reinvent the business from the ground up on what I'm calling the second chance startup. And so that was just more of a declaration of like, I want to figure something else out. I got so much to give, but I feel like I'm dying in this business. And so I then went down the path to figure out, hey, what am I going to do next? So I started this conference call product, spent about a year, a lot of money, and ultimately it was just a dud of a product. But like the number one lesson, and I knew the lesson was don't try and build a product that no one like wanted. No one wanted this product, but I didn't ask anybody. But about 6 months building that, I went back to the idea of what if I were to start all over and not have the baggage of call loop, but really start something from the ground up, like doing it the right way, different team, different vision, different product. And that's where sales message came from. Fast forward towards the end of the year, it was the end of 2016 was we basically were like, let's shut down this conference call product called Kick a Conference. And the developer at the time, I told him, he's like, oh, thank God. And we were working on it for a year. No one wanted this thing. We had like $1,000. So I was like, hey, I've got this other idea for this texting product called Sales Message. And meanwhile, Call Loop was still going. It was still generating revenue. And this was the conversational messaging product that really, solved my own problem where when I text people, they would reply. When I would, call people, they may not pick up. When I emailed them, it was hard to get responses. But when I sent texts, it was just like magic. People were actually responding. But I was using my own phone. So that was the impetus of that idea. I said, hey, before we go and launch this product or build it, which we made that mistake, remember, let me just go ahead and sell it. And so that was on a Monday. I sent an email out for a webinar on Thursday about this new product to our list of these Call Loop customers. And lo and behold, Thursday comes around. In the meantime, I put together a slide deck and photoshopped the design of the product. Nothing was made, just the idea. And at the end of the Thursday, I made an offer. We made about $3,000. And so pre-sold the idea. That was in October 2016. And so November, December, I think I did maybe 2 or 3 other webinars. We were, raised maybe $5,000, right? So that was the seed capital to go and build what is today, which is Sales Message. So, we've got almost 70 employees, people all over the world, serve thousands of customers. Made the Inc. 5,000 4 years in a row, but it started from that, which was like the frustration of, building something I didn't want and then ultimately solving a bigger, broader problem. And it's been quite the journey. Yeah.
What's the biggest mistake companies make when texting customers? Where do they cross the line from welcome to spammy?
Yeah. I think a lot of folks, they enter into SMS. If they've never done it before, they think, let me apply the same way that I'm communicating over email over an SMS, which is somewhat robotic or marketing, right? Like you got to be marketing. And so when you can sort of take that mask off and just be real, that's how you're going to get the best responses. So I think just like stripping away all of the things you think you need to do for messaging and just be normal, right? And just be like, that's the channel. The channel is me and you just texting back and forth, right? If every time you personalize it with "Hi, Chris," every single message, you'd be like, dude, like just be real, right? And so, one of the core values we have is be real and conversational. And so, the best messages are the ones that are the most real, most personal.
You've said texting is the sacred place. What does that mean in a world where brands are desperate for attention?
Yeah. I mean, look, on our phones, I mean, it's, our loved ones, our spouses, our family, right? That has been the channel since the beginning, has always been this sort of sacred space of personal communication with friends and family. Right. And so now you have businesses sort of entering into this space And so, there is there's an ethical way to engage with a lead or a customer, right? And then there's the opposite, which is sort of the spammier side. And so it still is this sacred space, right? Like it's in our pocket. And so if you sort of abuse that, people are pretty quick to opt out or, block you and that sort of thing. Also, too, is the brands, or sorry, the carriers from years ago, right? Anybody could get a phone number, anybody could send a text message. It created a lot of issues, right, around spam. We still get spam. You guys, I'm sure, get spam as well. But the carriers have been ahead of the curve in the sense that they need to maintain the integrity. And so now business to business texting is really only for real legitimate businesses. And so what that means is you have to get approved. So not everybody or every business can get approved for text messaging. And so it sort of creates this more, whitelisted platform that has been curated, and it'll improve. It'll get better over time, and so it just makes this like fast lane approach for businesses to reach their customers because they're getting approved. They're not getting denied.
I like what you said about, and I like that it's one of your core values as well, being real and being conversational. I do a lot of sales training and sales coaching, and I would argue all of our interactions with potential customers, existing customers should just be human. The more we try and layer in what we think sales is or what we think marketing is, the more we're actually creating distance between us and that person. So I love that approach there. Thinking of the medium, so SMS versus WhatsApp versus direct messages on different socials. You might not know off the top of your head, but do you know maybe any data on which of those works best? I'm assuming you'll say SMS, but can you
Yeah.
expand on why?
Yeah. I mean, look, in the United States, it's SMS, it's texting. And so I think, WhatsApp as a platform for communication is certainly entering the US market. So US is really SMS first. International, it's all WhatsApp. So, here in Brazil, it's all WhatsApp. Everything is WhatsApp. So you go to Europe, it's WhatsApp. So WhatsApp from a more international communication stance. The thing is Facebook owns that, right? And so there's limitations around WhatsApp and messaging and how businesses can use that. And, there's certain windows. And so, the carriers from a SMS perspective, and again, I'm speaking the United States, um, there are rules and regulations to send messages from content to throughput to all sorts of different things. Um, but again, as you expand internationally, you're going to reach people over on WhatsApp. And the reality is, it's just more expensive. If I were to send you a text message in the UK or in Germany, it's just expensive, right? And it's also a channel that, when I talk to people that are international, like, oh, I use all WhatsApp. And then, oh, I get text messages, but I get texts from like different companies or whatever it is. So it's just a channel that is not widely used around the world, but in the States, it's the dominant play.
But reason I ask is because I wonder with WhatsApp, because you can see the ticks and the blue ticks, have they actually read it? I wonder if there's a deeper level of analysis that you can do with that kind of software, or maybe you can do the same with SMS. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, people think like, what's the open rate for SMS? So there hasn't really been a way to record an open, right? And so, um, SMS is really, hey, when you sent it, was it successful or was it failed? And so if 100 phone numbers and all of them are mobile, you're effectively going to get 100% open rate, right? And so the stat is, within 15 minutes, 85% will open that text, right, and read it. Maybe it's changed. That's sort of the traditional stat that's been around for a long time. But SMS is sort of adding some newer, more modern approaches to it. So something called RCS. So maybe if you've seen it on your phone, when you text somebody, you have blue messaging, which is iMessages, and then when somebody has green, they have not iMessages, right? They have Android. Now you can see somebody that's typing on green, right? The same way that you could do that in iMessages. So that's something called RCS. So it's just brought more richer experience to messaging where, maybe 7, 8 months ago, it was not like that. You didn't know someone was typing and you couldn't do emojis. And It sort of did sent you a text when someone liked it. So just a lot of this older legacy messaging stuff. RCS sort of modernizes it to, in other words, compete with the modern messaging of iMessages and WhatsApp. And so there's that new tech that's coming out that makes it more modern, I would say.
Speaking of modernizing the experience there, I spoke to a gentleman who ran this newsletter agency, and he was looking at email open rates and different stats around that. And he said that AI now has this layer where it's actually screening your emails, so it's harder to actually land in front of your target customer or target audience compared to before. Do you already see do you anticipate seeing something similar when it comes to text message?
Yeah. So a couple of weeks ago, my friend Derek, he runs another SMS company. And so, being on, um, this information, like where's the future going with messaging and just as a channel. So iOS is doing an update. I think it's 26 or something like that, where they're actually, in my opinion, making messaging a lot more manageable. So there's a new inbox coming to Apple where it will have your known contacts, and then they'll have this other inbox. Right now in iMessages, maybe in Google, it's different, but now they'll separate those inboxes so you can see all those other unknown contacts in this other inbox. So it's going to be a lot more manageable, and I think from a consumer perspective, a lot better, right? Rather than just this entire list of one messaging blob, if you will. So the the carriers certainly, again, I'm talking like B2B, or not even B2B, but it's called A2P, so application to person, right? So business is sending text messages. So the carriers, they're filtering content, so you can't send certain content. So they're still doing all that sort of filtering. It's just going to get better, from an AI perspective. I think the future is all in AI messaging, especially from a business. You're really starting to see it now, where calling is moving towards AI agents, right? Texting, we have our own AI agents where you can have essentially automated conversations in your voice with your brand. And so this movement towards there's a leaky bucket when you have other humans sort of managing responses. There's a delay, right? And so if
Mhm.
you're a business
Yeah,
that's scaling, messages or conversations sort of equaled pain. And so the future is, well, how can you turn conversations like code? And well, you can do that, right? And so moving into this more AI messaging space to where conversations can scale
yeah.
and you can drive as many as you want. Um, and that's sort of
I
that's
think there's going to be a new economy that's bigger than the human economy that's going to be agents selling and working with other agents. So you'll have like an executive assistant that's agentic, and it's like, here's Chris's needs. And it'll just be like going to bat for you while you're having hopefully barbecue parties or something. And it's just going to be a whole new ecosystem. Okay, do you think that that's likely possible? And if so, do you think there'll still be like what we're talking about here, like human to human kind of economy?
I think this is where capitalism sort of changes the game in not a good way, right? And so when you have public companies leaning towards, profit and optimization, unfortunately, human capital is the number one expense. And so as AI really becomes a dominant force, that's the decision that they're going to ultimately make. So you go like, all right, well, where is my position as, a person today? Like, where's the value? And so as more companies start to experience AI calling, when you're calling, a bank or you're calling somewhere and that experience is better, or when you're messaging and it's 24 hours a day and that experience is better. So every business is going to optimize for experience. And so what's the experience? Well, it's going to be an AI driven experience that will learn and get better um, as every day, right? As every conversation sort of unfolds. So, um, even in our own business, right? So we generate leads. We talk to those leads over SMS. And sometimes if our agents are not there, there's a delay. And so that speed to lead is really important. One, the consumer wants a response. And then number two, we're incentivized to respond to them quickly. But what if there's no one there? What if it's on the weekend? What if it's at a nighttime? So an AI agent essentially becomes this front end force to have those conversations at scale. So like, fine, send 500 contacts, 1,000 contacts, 3,000 contacts. And that's going to perform way better because I think, we built a two-way conversational texting platform, right? It's dependent on people. And so how do you build a business that, has a human component, has an AI component? And so I think it's a world where it's AI first, right? And then you have a backup of people, right? Because people still want to speak to people. They want to communicate with people.
I hope
But I
so.
think the AI first is going to be the way in which businesses and people are just going to experience it and then want it. Oh my God, I want that. And now it's just going to be this exponential move towards AI communication. Buckle up, it's going to be an interesting world in 12 months.
I wonder if we'll kind of to David's point there, because I can see in the B2C world, like you said, optimizing for, I mean, the finances for the business side, but for the customer side, the experience as well. If ultimately all businesses are replacing humans with AI and they're doing B2B sales, then there's AI talking to AI trying to sell it. And then I wonder if the human component gets taken out entirely and it just gets down to zeros and ones. And that's the conversation that they have with each other to make decisions for a business, for a handful of humans that will just see the filtered version of it. I mean, that's me projecting
Yeah.
into the
Yeah.
sci-fi future, but it wouldn't surprise me if we got there quicker,
Yeah.
because the human experience would mean less if there aren't humans involved in businesses. For
Yeah.
consumers, sure.
Yeah. I mean, even today, everything is very UI focused, right? Like HubSpot. I need to be in HubSpot. I don't think that will ever get replaced with just something else. They have AI features. To be honest, I haven't really used them. And so I think I certainly believe a lot more in humanity that I don't think that will happen. I just think there will be parts of a business operation that are best suited for automation. And not every business is going to catch up to that. Even, if you're on X or you're on Twitter and you're seeing cutting, like the real time sort of people taking advantage of every single new LLM that comes out and exploding it. Businesses I think are going to take a longer time to adapt to that, but there's going to be new software that will come in that will make the current way obsolete. There's a really great article called the product market fit collapse. And the idea with this is, you have businesses that have certainly built their business solving a problem or a series of problems, and it takes all these steps to solve that problem. Well, AI can come in and really in one click say, oh, that's really nice. We just made all that obsolete. And so you have these big incumbents that have sort of built their business off of this solution. And that solution essentially becomes now a one click or an AI driven solution. So I think that's the biggest threat is, the businesses that can sort of get ahead of that, disrupt themselves before somebody else does, because some new startup working somewhere is probably creating some sort of solution. So I know we're getting all over the place here, but yeah, I think it's certainly a future, but I think there's still parts of businesses that um, you need a HubSpot, right? You need a big tool like that to really manage and run the business. Not everyone can think in terms of adding all these agents. There's still going to be the people in the middle to sell, but I think it will help move people in the position. So we have a tool and sales message for our AI scheduler. It's a booking agent. What it does is you generate leads. It will engage, qualify, and book meetings. And so you go, well, the current way is you generate a lead. Maybe you send them a text message, you're replying to that text, you call them, they don't pick up, you email. You sort of have this messy middle. What if that all sort of got replaced in a sense to where it was AI text messaging first, having that conversation, qualifying, engaging, booking meeting. Now your sales reps, all they need to do is just show up to a full calendar. What a better experience, right? And that's actually happening. So we're getting, we have a lot of customers that are just seeing insane results because they went from, this process to convert leads into booked meetings. And now this new process, it's like triple, right? And so now they just walk into full calendars. So that is a great piece of a business that can be um, AIified.
Hmm. Yeah, I think the culture will need some guardrails, as it always does. Being intentional about Peace Corps or getting on a farm and getting your hands dirty and just understanding kind of what it takes. And sometimes you go slow to go fast. So in the maybe we're not producing a billion things an hour on the farm, but there's something like that is irreplaceable in that experience, that human experience. I think to your earlier point, and we'll just probably need to I don't know, encourage it, if not, like, enforce it. Like, okay, here's your 2 hours. Like, get away from this because it's just going to be. I think it's just going to be dopamine overload. Like everything is exactly what I want, like in the agentic realm or the metaverse or whatever it is. I don't think that's healthy. So I think we should it's like limit. Like you can only eat 2 slices of cheesecake a day. Like this is, So I don't know what that'll look like exactly ethically, but I think that we're just gonna have to rethink rather than just blindly like wandering in and never coming out.
Yeah. Yeah. Interesting.
You mentioned earlier, by the way, congratulations, your Inc. 5000 success there. Could you talk a little bit about, if you can, your most, if not maybe a few of your most valuable lessons with scaling a company, specifically a remote company?
Sure. It's like sales message. Really, all the companies I built have always been remote first. I think there's pros and cons to doing that. And now at sort of a larger team, I'm starting to see some of the challenges that go with that. But I have a really great co-founder, Sergey, and Sergey is very process, system, structure built. Certainly wouldn't be where we're at today without him, from the technology side, but also like the business architecture of it. So what I mean by that is on our development team, there's just a really great process in place. So, there's ideation, there's design, then there's sort of elaboration, and then the execution and deployment of it. It's a really good process and it just works. It shows up on time. And regardless of where the team is around the world, everybody understands that process, where they fit into that. And, it's navigated us, up to this point. And so, as we start to pull that same system and deploy it across other teams, it's a little bit more difficult, right? So marketing, sales, they're not engineering focused. And so that mindset of a certain way to do a meeting or a certain way to, submit a ticket for an improvement. And so there have just been those challenges that, um, scaling that across the other parts of the business. There's really, our development team, and then there's like the business, right? And so it's been a little bit more difficult to do that. So recently, I just brought in a CFO, sort of operations person. He's local,
Fractional or full time?
full time, and so he's more operations than he is CFO. Guy I've known for 15 years, brought him in, and so he's local. And just the cycles that we've had to be able to work through concepts, think through ideas, make decisions have just exponentially been faster. It would have taken us, I don't think we ever would have gotten to any of the decisions we would have made if it was remote. And so it was just another clue to me, like, whoa, I really need like that leadership team local. And so we've always done quarterly meetings, leadership meetings, in person. Many times we would skip it. And so there's just a lot that gets lost because it's like, let's book a Zoom meeting and it's an hour and we can't get into anything beyond that. It's also hard sometimes to get into motion, like, if you need a whiteboard or something. So having him in the office has been amazing. And it's only been maybe about a little less than 2 months. So we just hired 2 new local people. I'm like, this is great. And so I think starting up the company, obviously, a plethora of talent is around the world and we take advantage of it. I mean, certainly, it's an advantage to be able to have a great team around the world and from a cost savings perspective. But I think when it comes to more of the strategic thinking, having those minds close has been a really good experience so far. So I think it's just a confirmation to have those, strategic minds, those high level minds, local and in person, to work through those decisions, and just brainstorm. So, yeah.
That's really interesting to hear that that framing. I think oftentimes, if not always, there's a trade off to every decision. So remote affords certain kind of advantages, but then there's a cost. There's no free lunch,
Right.
and it's interesting to hear your take on kind of that hybrid approach where you're benefiting from the global talent pool, but then also being intentional with having like a local core. Which personal habits or beliefs would you say most shaped your resilience as an entrepreneur?
Um, I I'm not materialistic. And so I think what's been core to me is just the accomplishment of like turning an idea into something tangible. And so I've never really chased the money. It was just like, cool, like I want to build a really great product that can solve a big problem. And it just so happens it makes money too. And so, you know, ultimately, I'm not building a product to be a charity. But for me, it was never about that. It was always just trying to solve problems and another problem and another problem. And that other problem opens up a new opportunity. That new problem opens up a new market. And over time, it just expanded, expanded, expanded. And so, I didn't take a salary for sales message until like 2023. So it was like 5 years into the business. I was generating money from another company, but I always just wanted to build a business, build a product, and serve a lot of people, but do it on my terms. Right? We could have went down the VC route and been on more of a fast track, but we wanted to sort of take control and build something that one, was a 1% daily improvement to gain versus sort of this, big scaling companies. So for me, it was just building something of value. I think the problem before with Call Loop is it was a great little company, but it can never be a really big company because it just didn't have the guts to do it. And so the vision around it, the mission, the larger sort of opportunity, and really the team. So yeah, um, I just loved solving problems, and there's a lot of problems to solve. And it just so happens solving these problems can help a lot of companies that want to solve that problem too. And they'll give you money to solve the problem. So it's just made it a very beautiful, equal exchange of value, versus trying to create something that nobody wants and there is no value on the other end. So
It's also, I think, coming back to something you said right at the start around marketing. I know a lot of people that have great ideas and could make a great product, but if they can't get it in front of the right people, it doesn't work. Or the other way around, like you said, that you could try and push a product that nobody wants. You need both. What insights could you share with our audience on marketing that can help them get their good idea or their solution in front of the right people?
yeah, I mean, distribution is the hardest part. And so I think just accidentally is to discover that, there are built-in marketplaces. Well, early on, we're a text messaging platform. And so early on, we integrated into other tools, right? We're using those tools. Other people are using those tools. There's a built in audience, a customer base there. Building on top of built in user bases is a huge part of businesses today. They need to be in the stack. And so there was really good copywriter. His name is Gary Bensavenga, and he did this event like in 2000. It's called the 100 Seminar, where he talked about, you got a built-in moat. And so he talked about the guy that created the Franklin Mint, and they would create figurines and different products for built-in audiences. So they would go to NASA, and they would go to Harley Davidson, they would go to all these brands, and it was like, of course, they already have a built-in audience. And so like, where's the built-in audience? Rather than trying to like create the audience from scratch. It's like, where's the audience? How can I solve for that? So we went straight after like Infusionsoft, Active Campaign, and then really in HubSpot is really where we started to see some really great growth. And we every single quarter, every single sprint are always dedicating like development to building out that integration to be better. And so HubSpot, sort of leading the charge from that, as they grow, we grow. As we make our product better, we get introduction to new audiences and new customers. And so that right there has probably been the biggest like growth factor for us is on the distribution side and just going after those integrations. We have an integration with Salesforce. It's a different motion to go and get sort of Salesforce customers, but many times they're like, "Hey, do you integrate here?" No, they're moving on, and so that becomes essentially a requirement to get larger companies because they want it in the stack. So, um, yeah, so that's really the best thing that we've done is just build that out there. I think messaging is important too. I mean, we've I wouldn't say have nailed that down, but um, like, what's the audience you serve? And so we're known as like probably one of the better. Um, I'd consider ourselves the top SMS app in HubSpot, and so that word has sort of gotten out, and so we have become a top leader for that. So the word of mouth is pretty high. So if you're looking for messaging for HubSpot, you'd look towards sales message. There's other competitors out there too that do certain things, but from a feature perspective, we sort of um, beat a lot of the competition out there. So
I see you are involved in peer groups. You have a significant experience with Entrepreneurs Organization and more recently with YPO. How would you say those have helped you as a business owner? And what is the difference from the outside? Curious, what's different about YPO versus EO? They both seem elite in their own way.
yeah, so I started in EO in 2016, and so they have an EO accelerator, and so it's based on revenue. So it's 250,000 minimum. And so I got into Accelerator, went through that. I thought mission statements and vision, that was all a bunch of baloney and, didn't really believe in that stuff until you want to hire people. It really matters. Right. And so then I graduated into EO. And so EO South Florida at the time was $1 million. And so the difference between EO, and it's been monumental. I met some amazing people in there. I just did like this training at MIT for the last 3 years that was introduced through EO as an EO program. The thing with EO, it's all entrepreneurs, and so people that are in construction or building or software or I mean, you name it, right? Like every sort of business is out there, and so you get a different perspective. And so every month I meet with my forum. There's 8 of us. We go through the ups and downs of meeting and forum, and so it's just been a really great sounding board for me, but also for them. There's many times someone's going through some sort of challenge, and through their challenge, you can learn too. And so it's just been a really great platform to fast track and get introductions and move the business forward. And so while EO is really all true entrepreneurs, I recently just joined into YPO, and that's entrepreneurs, but a lot of family business, right? So I'm in South Florida. I'm in the Palm Beach chapter. So you imagine the Palm Beach chapter. It's generational wealth. There are family offices. There are some folks that are not entrepreneurs, right? They're the CEO of this business, and so
Mhm.
it's a different and it's a totally different like game that these guys are playing. I mean, so one, it's inspiring, and number two is I'm seeing different businesses and how they're approaching things. And so from my entrepreneurial mindset, right, I think like get in there, get it done. But these folks come from a more strategic, like here's how we can get it done. And so it's interesting. It's certainly two different worlds where this world over here, it's the crazy world of entrepreneurship, and then over here is you know building, scaling $1 billion companies. And so it's
Mm.
very foreign to me, but you know, two different worlds.
Yeah, I could see how it might be really good to be aware of both, be involved in both worlds.
Yeah.
Do you have any moonshots or new dreams on the horizon?
Um, oh boy. Yeah. Like our big goal with sales message is to become like the leading all in one messaging platform for sales marketing support teams. So what that means is, companies are using this tool for that, and they're using sort of a hodgepodge of different tools. where what they really want is sort of like a HubSpot. Hey, I want everything in one tool. How do I, how's my sales team use it? How's my marketing team use it? How's my customer support team use it? So our bigger vision is to like dominate that, right? To like be that one main platform. And, I'd say the moonshot with that is it would be amazing to get $1 billion valuation. I know that sounds like insane. Even the words coming out of my mouth, I
Not
think
these
it's
days, it
possible.
doesn't.
I think it's yeah, I know. I mean, that's the crazy thing is, it is possible. So, that would be the moonshot.
What's your first big win that made you say, I can do this?
I mean, when I first started in business, with hardline performance, that was the name of this wheel business. What I figured out early on was, I was up in college, I couldn't get the inventory, and I was like, all right, well, if I can't get the inventory and I don't want them to ship it to me, could they just like ship it to the customer? And I just had a moment where I'm like, hey, and this is 2002, 2003. And I was like, hey, if I sell the product and I give you a shipping label, could you guys just ship it? And they're like, yeah, we'll do that. I'm like, okay. So I was literally just listing things on eBay. When it sold, I would give them a shipping label. And so I remember I was basically selling these tires. And so there was this tire company I did a deal with, and I would get these tires for like $25, resell them for like $70. And so this one time, this guy in Puerto Rico was like, hey, I want to buy all those tires that you have, these race tires. And, to me, it was just inventory. And so I ended up selling this, but I think the guy wired me like $7,000, right? I'm like 20 years old, and wired me all this money. And we ended up just shipping direct to this guy in Puerto Rico and whatnot. The problem is I never heard from him again because the tire company put their stuff on the label. So he went right over to that. But I just remember like early on was like, just sort of asking, oh yeah, we could do that. And not being afraid that they would say no. And so I think that was a very early lesson of just asking. And that became a whole new way to just do it.
Mhm.
Where before I had to ship it to Tallahassee and do this and do it was a pain in the butt and it cost more money. But just by me saying, can you ship it? They were like, yeah. And it just changed everything. So like drop shipping early days.
There was a guy that David spoke to a while back that was it Harvard he went to, David? But he didn't was it Harvard?
Which story are you talking
I
about?
think he went to Harvard, but he didn't actually go to Harvard.
Oh,
He just
Columbia,
ended
Harvard,
up
and Stanford, all three. But the first one was Columbia.
right. And he didn't enroll into any of them. He just went into the classes and got all of that amazing knowledge and met all of those people, and that took him somewhere. And I think it's that kind of thing. It's being willing to say, I'm doing this, it's not quite working. If I don't ask or if I don't try something, I stay where I am. But if I ask, I may well get $7,000 wired to me in an easier route to a customer or an easier route to finish something off. So I like
Yeah.
that kind of theme there of being willing to take a chance.
Who inspires you as a leader right now?
Who inspires me as a leader? I, um, gosh, I mean, what Elon is doing, whether you like him or hate him, it's pretty
What's the
remarkable what he has been able to accomplish and just the pace at which he is able to get things done. And so, and they seem all disparate, but they're all really
Mhm.
connected, robots
Yeah,
and Mars and SpaceX and,
yeah,
solar and like all these things. You're like,
Starlink.
whoa, all of those really are ultimately connected to like one bigger, grander idea. I mean, he busts his butt. And so, yeah, it's inspirational to think like big like that. Not that, I have any, groundbreaking, earth shattering ideas that I'm willing to sacrifice it all for, but it's just inspirational. I mean, he's just all over the place and really, um, yeah, that's a good one. I'm following a lot of these guys too that are just on X, building these smaller little companies where they're just very scrappy, right? They're building AI startups. They're building in public. And so it's really inspirational to see this sort of younger generation just building in public, creating
Yeah.
companies, building audiences, and that are really dialed in on the social side of things. Um, I don't have that same aspiration to sort of build a social media presence, but seeing this sort of younger generation just really lean into it and like what they've been
Mhm.
able to build. And
Mhm.
so there's a whole sort of universe of these guys and gals, but I like that. It's really cool to see these companies just pop up out of nowhere and create, um, yeah, like all through Twitter, all through X. So
What's the best piece of advice you ever received and from whom?
I sold this company in 2007, and the guy that bought the company, he's like, "Do you know why the business didn't actually grow?" And I'm like, "No." He's like, "You ate your dogs." And what he meant by that was, I was sucking out all the profit of the business. And when there's no profit, I couldn't reinvest to grow. And so I took that to heart when I was building sales message was I didn't want to suck out the money to starve it. And so, I think early on there has to be this sacrifice to grow the business, get it to a certain point to where you can start to take out some of the revenue there. And I just that was a big valuable lesson that has served me well. Maybe my wife wasn't so happy in the process, but it allowed the business to survive and thrive. And
Mhm.
without that, I don't think it would have been not possible. So that was a great word of advice that I needed to hear that has served me quite well.
Well, you shared a lot of great advice with us today. Thank you for giving us a peek into your impressive entrepreneurial journey so far. Much more to come, I'm sure. Where can people follow you, get in touch? Where would you like to?
They can go to salesmessage.com, learn more about sales message for messaging. If you ever need texting in your business and you want to communicate, faster, easier, and with AI, we can certainly help. And then they can reach me on LinkedIn. So just go to Chris Brisson. I'm pretty active on there. That's sort of where my business world is at. But yeah, that's where they can reach me.
Great. I'll put those
So
in the chat. Thank you.
David, Becky, thank you so much. I appreciate it.